The OSI teaches that everything in the universe happens according to the grand plan. But the stranger that arrived in Halcyon was an unplanned variable. From the moment he landed in Emerald Vale, his actions altered the course of history. The riots in Tartarus ended in a total victory for the board. Without any significant threats to challenge their power, the board asserted their control over the colony. The lifetime employment program began immediately, and the people of Halcyon did exactly what they were expected to do. They obeyed. Sophia Akande converted the labyrinth from a prison to a processing center. She jettisoned the original colonists out of the Hope and transformed the ship into a massive storage facility. One by one, the workers of Halcyon surrendered themselves to the program. They arrived with their families and their friends, their colleagues and their neighbors, and then, one by one, they marched into their stasis chambers. As the workers of Halcyon slept in their hibernation chambers, their settlements became ghost towns, left behind by the board to be reclaimed by nature. Only Byzantium remained, a shining beacon of civilization in an otherwise abandoned colony. The people of Byzantium spent the rest of their days gorging themselves on their stockpile of resources. As for the workers of Halcyon, they never felt the effects of the collapse. They never felt anything at all. Left leaderless, the people of Stellar Bay and Amber Heights were slowly but inevitably picked apart by the wildlife of Monarch. Left unchecked, the war on Monarch consumed both MSI and the Iconoclasts. And when the sulfur clouds settled, only stragglers from both factions remained. Some found their way to Sublight, some to Terra 2, and some lived their final years fighting for food in the wilderness. In the end, only the beasts remained. Over the years, the ruins of Edgewater caused irreversible environmental damage to the landscape of Emerald Vale, owing largely to the presence of toxic compounds in the town's building materials. As for Edgewater's former workers, their remains provided a source of nourishment for the region's fauna, leading to an explosion in the sprat population. The collapse of Edgewater left its workers bereft of any purpose in life. Most of them made their way to Adelaide McDevitt's camp, hoping to ingratiate themselves into her favor. Adelaide accepted only a few to her community. The rest were turned away and likely died of starvation. Nevertheless, Adelaide's camp grew into a well-established town. It was only a matter of time before the adjutant sent her troops to wipe out Adelaide's town. Only one deserter escaped the massacre. He was believed to be carrying the last remaining copy of Adelaide's research. The bounty on his head remained unclaimed. Junlei Tennyson struggled to maintain the groundbreaker's independence. Mechanical failures forced her to make increasingly uncomfortable compromises to stabilize her ship. The board bought her out of the groundbreaker one deck at a time. While she kept the ship intact, her role as captain became a symbolic one. As smaller settlements were swallowed up and their workers drafted into the lifetime employment program, Byzantium continued to thrive. While its citizens lived in decadence and extravagance, a small cadre of scientists worked to solve the nutrition crisis that threatened Halcyon. No one else much noticed the townships that disappeared from the map, or the luxuries that slowly lost their luster year by year. Though Parvati eventually grew comfortable aboard the Unreliable, she never quite came out of her shell. And she often wished aloud that her dad was still alive to teach her about the finer points of starship care and maintenance. As the board began to roll out their lifetime employment program, Parvati was plagued by dreams of freezing to death. She began taking increasingly longer shore leaves, and she eventually disappeared from the Unreliable entirely. The board never knew what became of her, and under the adjutant's orders, they never tried to find out. Parvati was afforded a measure of peace and left to her own devices. Nyoka returned to Monarch to take another crack at making a permanent life for herself. She formed the Charon Group, a mercenary outfit of ragtag survivalists and wilderness experts. Anyone in need of a guide or just looking to throw back a beer and swap stories could find her camping on the trail or clearing an infestation. Before his untimely death, Captain Alex Hawthorne had plans to restore and modify, for combat purposes, a sanitation and maintenance automechanical that he'd found in a state of disrepair in Emerald Vale's scrapyard. That unit remains broken down and forgotten in the unreliable supply closet to this day. Adjutant Sophia Akande was instrumental in executing the lifetime employment program. While the rest of Byzantium celebrated, Sophia returned to work by partnering with you. The two of you worked hard to ensure the lifetime employment program ran smoothly. With Halcyon's workers suspended in a state of hibernation, starvation and chaos are problems of the past. The lifetime employment program succeeded in its goals, but that success came at a price. The Halcyon of today is nothing at all like the colony of yesteryear. Power remains concentrated in Byzantium, but all the colony's resources serve the lifestyle of the elite, thereby transforming Halcyon into one of the smallest and most exclusive colonies in the system. And what about you, the unplanned variable in the history of Halcyon? After the riots on Tartarus came to an end, you threw in your support with Sophia Akande. While Akande administered the board herself, you oversaw the lifetime employment program, stamping out corruption and negligence. Under your leadership, the program ran smoothly. Halcyon's workers were treated with a modicum of dignity. Your involvement kept the board honest and allowed the board scientists to work without the meddling of bureaucracy. No one knows what's happened to Earth, and no one knows what the future has in store for Halcyon. All we know for certain is this: the name of the Unreliable and that of its intrepid captain will remain the subject of countless stories for years to come.